All right, today we are diving deep into a sector that's, often overlooked but is absolutely critical to the green transition. I'm talking about climate technology, specifically HVAC. We're going to break down the entire industry and take a hard look at what 2025 has in store.
But here's the thing, we're not just going to throw a bunch of facts at you. We're going to tackle this just like a top consulting firm would if they were briefing a CEO on a really complex problem. So, how exactly do they do that?
Well, they have a secret weapon. It's a powerful but surprisingly simple framework called SCQA. It stands for Situation, Complication, Question, and Answer. It's really just a way to tell a story that cuts right through all the noise and gets to the point. And that's exactly how we're going to structure our analysis today. So let's jump in with the situation.
Okay, first up, the situation. What we're looking at here is a sector that is being completely re-engineered from the ground up by this new climate reality. I mean, this isn't just about making rooms a little warmer or a little cooler anymore. The whole game is changing.
The biggest force, the biggest driver here, it's decarbonization. These huge global goals like net zero 2050, well, they aren't just polite suggestions, they are mandates. And they are forcing a massive, once-in-a-generation upgrade cycle. Buildings are ripping out old tech and shifting to things like advanced heat pumps and these super-efficient ventilation systems. This is creating a powerful, long-term tailwind for the entire industry.
Now, for our first major complication, while decarbonization is a pretty predictable wave, the absolute explosion of artificial intelligence, that's a whole different story. It is a disruptive force creating a brand new, high-value market out of thin air. You see, AI's unquenchable thirst for computing power generates a ton of heat, and that demands incredibly specialized cooling. And you can see right here, the key players are racing to grab a piece of this pie. AAON is going after high-density setups, Carrier's got its quantum leap system, and SPX is just trying to ramp up production fast enough to keep up.
And another complication is coming straight from the regulators. Laws like the U.S. AIM Act are forcing a non-negotiable systemic shift away from old refrigerants that have a high global warming potential, or GWP. This means the entire industry has to retool its products for new alternatives like R454B. And the takeaway here is crucial. You either adapt or your products literally become obsolete. It's a massive risk for sure, but it's also a huge driver of new sales.
But look, it's not all clear skies and tailwinds. This slide lays out the other side of the story perfectly, the headwinds that are basically putting a ceiling on all that growth. So on one side, you've got these incredible tailwinds we just talked about. But pushing back, you have high interest rates hammering the residential market, new U.S. tariffs adding big surcharges, and a real weakness in China's construction market. It's a classic tug-of-war.
So that's the landscape. That's our situation and our complication. And all of that brings us to the big question. In this really complex environment, who is actually set up to win? To find the answer, we've got to benchmark the key competitors. Let's see what the data tells us.
Okay, first up, let's look at who's actually investing in the future. This table on R&D spending is so revealing. You can see AAON way out in front at over 4%. For a company its size, that is a huge number. It signals a really aggressive technology-forward strategy. They are trying to innovate their way to the top.
But, innovation is only one part of the story. You have to turn it into profit. And what's so interesting here is what this chart tells us about just pure operational excellence. Just look at Trane, an 18.6% operating margin. That's not just good, it's miles ahead of its direct competitors. This shows best-in-class profitability, which means they have pricing power and fantastic cost control. Let's circle back to AAON for a second, because this slide is a really fascinating puzzle. You don't have to get bogged down in the details, just focus on two things. On the left, you can see their backlog has just exploded by 111%. That's the data center boom we talked about. Amazing, right? But now look at the financials on the right. See how their profit margin is getting squeezed? This is what analysts sometimes call profitless prosperity. The big question for them is whether they can turn that mountain of new orders into actual healthy cash flow.
Now, let's switch gears and look at a masterclass in strategic transformation. For years, Zehnder was basically the radiator company. But as this chart makes crystal clear, they have pulled off a massive pivot. Ventilation now makes up 2/3 of their sales. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, smart move to align with where the market is going, energy efficiency and indoor air quality.
Of course, not everyone grows by building from within. Two of the big titans, Carrier and SPX, are going on a shopping spree, pursuing growth through major acquisitions. Carrier's huge purchase of Weissman was a bold move to try and dominate the European heat pump market.
SPX, on the other hand, has been buying up these smaller, specialized tech companies to get deeper expertise in industrial cooling. So you have two very different M&A strategies, both chasing that future growth.
All right, another really critical measure of success is efficiency. Basically, how much money does each employee bring in? And wow, this slide is striking. Trane and SPX are just playing on a different level here, generating nearly $500,000 per employee. That is almost double their peers. It just points to incredibly efficient, scalable operations. So let's put it all together. This summary of financial health from HDIN research really shows how different the strategic realities are for these companies. We've already talked about AAON and their cash flow challenge. Then you have Carrier and Trane, who are using debt, but their strong cash flow means it's totally manageable. And then there's Zehnder, whose numbers look a little too good because of a quirk in Swiss accounting rules, something any investor would really need to dig into. The details really matter. Okay, so this benchmarking gives us a pretty clear picture of where things stand today. But what about tomorrow? Let's move into our final section and look at the technologies and strategies that are going to separate the winners from the losers in the future.
So the single most fundamental shift happening is in the business model itself. The game is no longer just about selling a big metal box. It's all about creating life cycle value. That means a huge focus on electrification with things like advanced heat pumps. It means digitalization, using AI to optimize buildings like Trane buying BrainBox AI. And it means capturing that sweet recurring revenue from service, maintenance, and even refurbishment. And on the technology front, the next battleground is already clear. You've got the mainstream giants like Carrier and Trane who are focused on the massive industry-wide transition to new refrigerants. But at the same time, you have these niche innovators. You have AAON engineering specialized heat pumps that can work in insanely cold weather, and Zehnder is out there pioneering natural refrigerants. Both of these paths are absolutely critical for the industry's future.
So when you step back, you can really map the entire competitive landscape into four distinct types of players. You've got your premium differentiators, that's Trane and Carrier, who win on scale and digital services. Then you have the niche specialists like AAON and Zehnder, who are all about custom tech. Then you have the aggregators like SPX, growing by buying other companies. And finally, you have the cost leaders, not really represented here, who just win on massive volume. Everybody has a lane.
And that brings us to our final diagnosis, the ultimate answer to our question. After looking at the situation, the complications, and all the competitive moves, what really defines a winner in this new climate tech era? The big takeaway is this. The future of climate control isn't about being hotter or colder. It's about being smarter, using digitalization and AI. It's about being faster to adapt to new rules and new markets. And it's about being cleaner by really driving that energy transition forward. That's the formula. That's what's going to separate the leaders from the laggards. For a much deeper dive, you can find the full analysis over at HDIN Research. Thanks for tuning in.